Happy Wednesday to you. Today, I want to talk about number 10 of 15 priorities we have identified as things that St. Stephen needs to get right in the next 4 years. And housing, it's number 10 on the list of the priorities in no specific order, but it is number 1 on my list of things that I believe St. Stephen needs the absolute most. And I want to unpack why today, and then what that actually looks like. Because do we just say, yeah, we just need more housing? That is easy to say. I am interested in SMART goals. I've talked about this before, targets, and finding out whether we're hitting those targets or whether we are falling short. It is very important to be able to measure our goals and see the impact it is making. And that's the kind of thing that I will do as mayor with your next council. When we say we need housing, first of all, why do we need more housing? Well, again, I've talked about it. This is over 90 videos now. We always need to be growing as a municipality because our infrastructure is wearing out. Infrastructure decays. That means roads and pipes do need to be replaced, which means if the population is just static, then, of course, with inflation costs going up, that means the costs of things go up, and the burden to pay and replace infrastructure, pay for infrastructure that is wearing out, the burden falls on that same tax base, and therefore property taxes will continue to go up. So this is just a reality of a municipality needing to replace its own population and also grow in order to just be affordable and not cut down on services or have to stop maintaining certain areas of its municipality, as we do see some larger metro centers doing. For example, it gets a lot of popularity in the United States when a municipality does need to stop just servicing an area. So we never want to see that happen. That is why we want to increase the tax base without increasing the tax rate on people who live here already. So that is just one of the realities of a municipality. Now, if you want to increase the tax base, you need housing. So this is just a very practical solution to keeping costs low on an existing population in a municipality. Okay, so that is important to just know right off the bat. Now, where are we falling short in St. Stephen? We need housing in all the areas of the housing continuum. Yes, I'm whipping this out. I'm bringing this out again so that you can see this is what is known as the housing continuum. It's all the different kinds of housing or different levels of housing that a population generally needs. Now, down at this end, we have homelessness. So this is population that would have no housing at all. Again, we do have 40 to 60 people living rough in a small population like ours of about 5,000 people. That number is shockingly high, uncharacteristically high. So we do have a problem in St. Stephen with this, which is why we need an emergency shelter. The fact that we have an emergency shelter that is packed to the gills every single night, it is difficult on the neighborhood around the shelter, shows that this is an absolutely acute need, but it is called an emergency shelter for a reason. Someone who finds themselves falling into homelessness, that should not be their solution for years and years on end. But that is what we are seeing, is folks needing to use the shelter, many of who are from St. Stephen, and there are studies to back that up, surveys based on from the Southwest Service Commission. I want to talk about the numbers piece from a study that they conducted. But we have folks who have fallen into homelessness post-COVID when costs really rose. Housing got just too expensive for a lot of people. They find themselves in substance use disorder, addicted to substance. I've talked about how we need to stop tolerating the kind of open drug use and drug dealing that happens. That's a justice issue. See my videos the last few days. I can't say everything about an issue in 10 to 15 minutes, but that's why we need to get that next step right here, which is transitional housing or bridge housing, where people move out of an emergency shelter as a participant in a program to get their own space, get off drugs, get them the health services they need. Again, those provincial services, we have to think about tackling this problem from a housing, health, and policing perspective. Those three things working together. See my video yesterday. And then we can get people into more independent living, where they are paying some rent, and they are getting a job, and they are learning to live. But it is kind of a co-living. Sometimes it's a group home where there is somebody in charge of that home, a live-in situation, and then they can move into a more independent transitional housing. And these names are different in different communities, but you're getting the idea of independent housing. There's public housing, government subsidized housing. We just had 5 units from Housing NB go up in St. Stephen. And it's important that we're always lobbying the government to get more housing. The provincial government just got out of building any sort of provincial housing for about 40 years. Not a single unit was built. And suddenly we're seeing all the negative effects on that, and how important it is to actually have government housing to help people move up along the continuum. And then, of course, you have affordable housing is in here, where there's certain units. For example, when the dock is going in at the old Border Arena area, there are a number of units that the developer can apply to the government for to be subsidized to the builder to make some units below market cost, so people can find an affordable housing. We need more affordable units in our municipality. And then, of course, market housing is just units that are on the market, whether they are rental units, whether they are private homes, that kind of thing. So this is why we need to build out all of those specific categories of the housing continuum, because we are in desperate need of housing in St. Stephen. And housing, here's how housing solves our many challenges, because we are seeing here, okay, businesses are closing. They're not able to get enough customers, it seems. There are safety issues, people not feeling safe walking around. There are policing issues. There drug use in places that where on the trails and things like that, place where there is not activity. Housing is shown in communities to bring activity and vitality to a community. People are looking for places to move and to live. And I've said it before, St. Stephen does not need to try hard to sell itself in that regard. I came visiting here in 2018, saw the place, absolutely loved it. I've spent the last 10 days talking about our 15 priorities for what we need to get right. And a lot of those are just about retaining the population and attracting people, whether it's tourists, whether it's people moving here. And again, as someone who has done that myself and meet so many people knocking on doors who have moved here but are starting to feel like on uneasy footing, what's going on in St. Stephen, that's why we need even more housing. Because when you get housing, you get more people here, right? And of course, again, sharing the tax load, that is a benefit. But then you get more people here, and that means you get more customers here. People need to buy things, whether it's for their houses or their families or for any sort of consumption, groceries. And then when you get more customers here, you will get more businesses popping up. And we need zoning. I'm going to talk about businesses over the next the 5 days remaining, but we need zoning that is more helpful and more conducive to businesses not having to take on a huge load of debt, but can get something started for that increased customer base when people move here. And then when you have more businesses, you do have more employees and employment opportunities here, which is fantastic. And then, theoretically, those businesses are going to be, some of them would be in the industrial park perhaps or other areas, but downtown. And that's why I want to see more housing zoning specifically in the downtown area. Yes, I believe the downtown of the future, friends, will not be as many brick and mortar shops as you may be used to. I just think that's the future. That's what everything is pointing to. Our downtowns might be a more concentrated area of housing. That is how you get a sustainable downtown. Because right now, we got to just say it, it's not working where we have people opening shops, trying, holding on, and closing. Opening shops, trying for a year, maybe holding on and closing. And if, as long as we continue to have that expectation that shops will just open and make it, what we need is more people in the downtown, which will then support shops and services. So kind of the downtown of 120 years ago, where you had housing up above, then you even had housing on street level and little shops opening in those living spaces, and then they're sustainable because all the burden is not on the business. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future, and that is the way forward for a downtown like ours. So once you have more customers, more people, more businesses happening in, say, a downtown, then you have more activity on the street. And when you have more activity, you have more safety. It's really derelict buildings and vacant spaces that cause kind of unsafe activity and that feeling of lack of safety. And so that is going to help with the safety challenge as well. And then, of course, when the safety challenge is eliminated, it's like a loop. You continue to have more activity and more economic activity, which brings in more visitors and which brings in more people, which then brings in more housing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of like the positive loop that you get when you start tackling this problem with housing. I also want to say, because it's easy to just say we need more housing. The Southwest Service Commission, which you've heard me mention many times, that shared planning service that we are a part of with other municipalities in our regional service district, they are constantly analyzing where we live with really good data. And I just wanted to throw some things at you. The link is in the Facebook and YouTube description of a 2022 housing study that came out. It's based on 2020 data. So think about, that feels like ancient history, pre-COVID, before St. Stephen really boomed. They did a prediction of how this area, St. Stephen, would grow. And what that meant was they believed that St. Stephen specifically, they did all the municipalities, but I just want to share some of the stats with you. They believed St. Stephen would grow about 3%. The vacancy rate at that time, and CBC did a study on this in 2022, actually. Our vacancy rate was between 0.5 and 2.5%. That means of all the units, the houses, apartments, everywhere someone could live in St. Stephen, the vacancy rate, the number of empty units at any one time, was only about, let's say, an average of 1 to 2.5%, okay? A healthy vacancy rate in any city or town is between 3 to 5%. And so they said, for example, of all the places in St. Stephen at that time of the study, there needed to be between 25 and 43 open units and homes at any given time to accommodate what people needed. Can you imagine 25 to 43 empty houses or apartments in St. Stephen? Of course not. I can't either. That is absolutely not happening. Then they talked about the future potential of, and by 2026, so that's the year now. We can actually look at this study now and see how things have changed. I love talking to the guys at the Southwest Service Commission, the planning team there. I know them personally, and this is the kind of thing where we would look at this data and say, how did we do, especially at the closeout of something like this, and then say, what do we need to do in the next 4 years? So here they said the forecasts of potential future housing demand by renters and owner households, so they always separate renters and owners. They said there would need to be 845 rental homes by 2026, rental units or homes, and 1,502 owned homes, kind of market value homes. Now, what that meant when they broke it down was there needed to be 50 to 68 new rental units in that 2021 to 2026 period, and 44 new owned homes for a total of 94 to 112 units. And then, here's the big one. The forecast of required units if municipalities wish to address historical rates of core housing need. I want to just land the plane here. Core housing need is when people are spending more than 30% of their income on their housing. It's considered by most economists, personal finance people, that you need to be spending under 30% of your income on your shelter needs. So if you're above that, you're in what's considered core housing need. If you're spending more than 50% on your housing, you're in extreme core housing need. In order, friends, for us to have a thriving municipality where we're building wealth and we have disposable income to spend on restaurants and shops, people cannot be in that core housing need. That means you don't have disposable income. You're just, shelter, gas, if you can afford it, and groceries, right? So that's how we get thriving communities, is getting the cost of homes down. And you just saw how we needed to add that many more units, 45 new owned, 50 to 68 new rental. To put that in perspective, we have the dock opening up. That's 66 units right there for rental, with some affordable, but we're always needing to build more. The province-wide phone test killed my feed there for a second, my recording, but we are back. Here is the real stat when it comes to core housing need. For St. Stephen, according to this study, we would need 105 to 123 more rental units in our municipality and 49 owned units in our municipality, for a total of 154 to 172 units. So this is the kind of thing, yes, these numbers are a little bit behind 2020. They're released in 2022 based on a 2020 housing study. Again, that feels like ancient history because of where all the things that have happened, but that was projected up to 2026. So we can take these kinds of numbers and say, where are we at? Where are we going? Are we hitting the housing continuum, and are we bringing down the cost of living? Are we making things more affordable with housing stock? Because when we add housing stock, all those costs come down, and we see people are not living in core housing need or extreme core housing need, and our municipality is overall in a healthier place. Our community has more disposable income, and we can thrive together as we build wealth and build up St. Stephen. All right, that's it for today, friends. This excites me because I know it is something we can aim towards and try to target with real numbers throughout the next 4 years. BuildUpStStephen.ca, that is my website. I hope to get to work on this as your mayor. Take care of yourself today and each other, and let's build up St. Stephen together. Cheers.